This is the startup guide for the Air One robot. So you can mount this either right side up, like you see right here, or it can also be mounted upside down, inverted. Doesn't matter. Just secure it in whatever that position is before you start it. You can't start it right side up and move it upside down or vice versa, because it has to go through a series of calibrations when it boots. It needs to know what's right side up and all that. Balance of the camera and lens payload in here. These levers right here control the slide front to back. So what you do is you pull them out and then you can unlatch them like that and like that. And then you have free movement of the whole camera carriage across that slide. I like to do it with 2 thumbs like this on the little wheels, and I can very easily move it front to back. When you change the lens, you can literally rebalance and be going in 30 seconds. If you need to get in and swap the card, you just slide it all the way forward, and right in there is your access to put your CFast card to relock them. It's pretty straightforward. You just kind of pull them back and out and they'll drop right back into place. Make sure the payload is always secure and make sure the base is always secure. Super important. Just for the overall, not only for safety, but also for the overall performance of the gimbal. It doesn't like it if this base is loose in any way. So make sure you always crank this thing down nice and tight. There's also a safety release on this other side here for when it comes time to take it out. Ports you have on the back side here. You have HDMI, you have Ethernet, you have 2-pin LEMO for power and 5-pin LEMO for audio. You can connect up something like this, 5-pin LEMO to stereo XLR, and get your audio routed through into the camera. Rotation, so you have 710 degrees of rotation on the robot. So if that's forward, what that means is you can spin it all the way around like that before it hits a hard end stop, and go all the way around the other way before it hits a hard end stop. There's also software in here that slows that down and prevents it from slamming into the end before it gets to the end stop. So let's show you what the boot sequence on this looks like. Ethernet plugged in. This is power, 2-pin LEMO power going into the back, and you're going to see the robot go through its boot up cycle here. When you power it up, you're going to see it do a bunch of calibrations. So first thing it's going to do is level. That little shake that you see is it calibrating its IMUs and gyroscope, figuring out what level is. It's going to come back to, a 0-degree axis and a 0-degree axis on the pan and the tilt, and level itself out. The lens calibration is what you see happening now. It's going to zoom all the way in and zoom all the way out and then do a series of speed changes. That's to help calibrate the motor to the set and recall. So you set positions on the robot and you can recall those positions at very specific speeds. So we have super accurate encoders, not only in all of the axes of the robot, but also in the zoom motor to give you that very kind of precise landing when it comes back to your position. So once it does this whole boot cycle, and this takes about 60 seconds or so, depends on if it runs into any issues with the calibration. If you hear any skipping or anything in the gears, make sure that your zoom motor is properly engaged, nice and tight into these lens gears here. You don't want it too much pressure on it or too little. If it's too little, it'll skip out. If it's too much pressure, it won't be able to turn easily. So once the robot completes its whole startup cycle, on the back here on the e-ink display, you're going to see various information. So you're going to see information about what version of the AirStation API is running on here. You're going to see a VPN IP, a LAN IP, the Air ID, which is that 12-character code on the bottom, and then the nickname. This particular one is named Aussie. There's also a QR code it's used to connect to the configuration of the robot in the Air Cloud, which is a whole thing that we'll get into later on. So once you've set the robot up, it's done its boot cycle, you have that IP address, Then you come over to the iPad hardwired into an Ethernet dongle. Okay, over here on your iPad, you launch the Air app. Down here in the little wheel, you can control up to 6 different Air stations on one iPad. So you come in there and enter the IP address that's displayed on the back, 10.1.4.130. And then you say save, and now it's going to connect to that camera, and now I can control. So the way the basic controls on the robot work is I touch, and that's my point of origin. The further I move it away from the point of origin, the faster it goes. So I can go back towards the point of origin to ease to a stop. So one of the things that's kind of neat about this is you can do much more precision movements than you can do with your typical PTZ joystick. So that's the basics of the Air 1 robot. We'll have some other videos with some more detail about the software controls and how to connect to the Air Cloud.